excited, I feel overwhelmed and uncertain. Marcus says he wants to be a responsible father and be involved in his son's life. Part of me respects that because I could never be with someone who abandoned their child. But another part of me can't ignore the pain that comes with knowing that his connection to this woman will never truly end. He keeps asking me what boundaries would make me comfortable and how we can move forward as a family. He wants us to discuss visitation schedules, communication rules, and what role I would play in the child's life. The problem is that every conversation brings me back to the affair and the hurt it caused. We also share a young daughter who adores both of us, and the thought of breaking apart our family breaks my heart. Still, I can't shake the feeling that this situation may be something I never fully recover from. Now I'm standing at a crossroads, trying to decide whether walking away is the right choice or whether I should keep fighting for the future we once planned together. As I sit here looking at the wedding invitations on the table, I can't help but wonder if love is enough to overcome a betrayal that will be a permanent part of our lives. The following weeks were some of the hardest of my life. Every time Marcus tried to talk about the future, I found myself thinking about the past. He wanted to focus on solutions, but I was still struggling with the damage that had already been done. One evening, after our daughter had gone to bed, we sat in the living room and had a conversation that lasted for hours. "I know I can't change what happened," Marcus said quietly. "But I don't want to lose you because of the worst mistake I've ever made." I wanted to believe him. Part of me still loved him deeply. But love and trust are not the same thing. I asked him questions I had asked dozens of times before. Why did it happen? Why didn't he think about our family? Why should I believe it would never happen again? He answered every question patiently, but none of the answers made the pain disappear. A few days later, Marcus attended a meeting with his ex to discuss arrangements for the baby. Even though he told me exactly where he was going and how long he would be there, I spent the entire afternoon feeling anxious. When he returned home, I hated myself for immediately wondering whether he was telling me the whole truth. That was when I realized how much the affair had changed me. I wasn't just questioning him anymore, I was questioning myself. The following weekend, my sister invited me out for coffee. She listened quietly as I poured out months of frustration, anger, and confusion. After a long silence, she asked me one question. "If nothing changed from today onward, could you live with this situation for the next 20 years? I didn't answer immediately. The truth was that I didn't know. The baby wasn't going anywhere. Neither was the child's mother. Birthdays would happen. School events would happen. Unexpected phone calls would happen. There would always be a reason for Marcus and his ex to communicate. For the first time, I stopped thinking about whether I could forgive the affair and started thinking about whether I could accept the reality that came with it. That thought followed me everywhere. A few days later, Marcus asked if I would be willing to meet the baby someday. The question caught me completely off guard. I looked at him in disbelief. He quickly explained that he wasn't asking right away. He just wanted to know whether there was any possibility that, in the future, I could be part of his son's life. I didn't know what to say. The baby had done nothing wrong. He was innocent in all of this. Yet every time I thought about him, I was reminded of one of the most painful moments of my life. Marcus could see the conflict written all over my face. "I don't expect you to have all the answers right now," he said. But that was exactly the problem. The wedding date was getting closer. Guests were already making travel arrangements. Deposits had been paid. Family members kept asking questions about final preparations. Meanwhile, I was secretly wondering whether there would even be a wedding at all. Then, one afternoon, something happened that made everything even more complicated. I received a message from a number I didn't recognize. When I opened it, my stomach immediately dropped. My hand started shaking as I stared at the message. It was from Marcus's ex. For a moment, I considered deleting it without reading further. I had spent the last year trying to avoid any direct contact with her. But curiosity got the better of me. The message was surprisingly polite. She said she wasn't reaching out to cause trouble. In fact, she apologized for contacting me directly. She explained that she felt there were things I deserved to know and that she was tired of everyone pretending the situation didn't exist. I read the message 3 times. Part of me was angry that she had contacted me at all. Another part of me wanted answers. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. A few days later, we met at a small cafe across town. The entire drive there, I questioned whether I was making a mistake. When I arrived, she was already sitting at a corner table holding a cup of coffee. She looked nervous. So was I. For several awkward moments, neither of us knew what to say. Finally, she broke the silence. "I know you probably hate me." I didn't respond. The truth was that I had spent months blaming her for destroying the future I thought I was building. But I also knew Marcus had made his own choices. She took a deep breath. I never planned any of this. I listened carefully as she explained her side of the story. According to her, when she and Marcus reconnected, she believed their meeting was harmless at first. Old memories turned into conversations. Conversations turned into something neither of them should have allowed. She admitted that she had feelings for him that never completely disappeared. Hearing those words made my chest tighten. Then she said something that caught me off guard. He told me he loved you. I looked up immediately. She nodded. He talked about you all the time. That's why I thought whatever happened between us would never become anything serious. The conversation left me feeling more confused than before. Nothing she said excused what happened. But for the first time, I was hearing a version of events that wasn't coming from Marcus. When I returned home that evening, Marcus immediately noticed something was wrong. After several minutes of silence, I finally told him. I met her. The color drained from his face. For a moment, he looked genuinely shocked. You what? I met her. The room became painfully quiet. Marcus sat down across from me. What did she say? I told him everything. Every detail. Every explanation. Every uncomfortable truth. At first, he seemed defensive. Then he became frustrated. Eventually, he simply looked exhausted. The conversation lasted late into the night. By the end of it, neither of us felt better. The next morning, I woke up feeling emotionally drained. As I walked into the kitchen, I noticed a stack of wedding brochures on the counter. Venues. Decorations. Guest lists. Honeymoon plans. For months, those things had represented excitement and hope. Now they felt like reminders of a future that seemed more uncertain every day. A week later, our couples counselor asked us a question that neither of us was prepared for. If the wedding was scheduled for tomorrow, would both of you still walk down the aisle? The room fell silent. Marcus answered first. Yes. Then everyone looked at me. My heart started racing. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, I realized that I wasn't struggling because I didn't know the answer. I was struggling because I was finally starting to know exactly what my answer might be. The counselor noticed my hesitation immediately. Marcus noticed it too. And from the expression on his face, he knew it before I even spoke. Marcus's face fell. The counselor remained quiet, giving me space to speak. I stared at the floor for several seconds before finally finding my voice. If the wedding was tomorrow, I paused. I don't think I could do it. The words hung in the air. Marcus leaned back in his chair as if the breath had been knocked out of him. For months, I had been trying to convince myself that time would heal everything. But saying those words out loud forced me to confront a truth I had been avoiding. I wasn't ready. The counseling session ended shortly afterward. The drive home was silent. That night, Marcus slept in the guest room. The next few weeks felt strange. We were still living under the same roof. We still shared responsibilities with our daughter. We still ate dinner together most evenings. Yet there was an invisible distance between us that neither of us knew how to cross. One evening, after putting our daughter to bed, Marcus asked if we could talk. We sat on the back patio as the sun disappeared behind the trees. I need to ask you something, he said. I nodded. Are you postponing the wedding because you need more time, or because you've already decided you're leaving? The question hit me harder than I expected. Because I wasn't completely sure myself. There were moments when I looked at him and remembered why I fell in love with him. He was a wonderful father. He supported me through difficult times. He had been my best friend for years. But then there were moments when I remembered the betrayal, the lies, the pregnancy, the baby, and all the complicated emotions that came with it. I don't know, I admitted. Marcus looked away. For the first time since all of this started, he looked defeated. The next month, we officially postponed the wedding. Explaining it to family and friends was humiliating. Some people were supportive. Others were curious. A few clearly suspected there was more to the story than we were telling them. Meanwhile, Marcus had started spending more time with his son. Every Saturday morning, he would leave the house and spend several hours with the baby. At first, I hated those days. I found myself counting the hours until he came home. Wondering what they talked about. Wondering if his ex was there. Wondering if they looked like a family. Then one Saturday, something unexpected happened. Marcus returned home carrying a small gift bag. It's for Lily, he said, referring to our daughter. I looked confused. The baby's grandmother bought it for her. I froze. The baby's grandmother. The ex's mother. Suddenly, it hit me just how connected all of these lives were becoming. There were grandparents, aunts, uncles, family gatherings, future birthdays, school events. This wasn't a temporary problem. This was a permanent reality. A few days later, Lily asked a question that neither of us was prepared for. She was coloring at the kitchen table when she looked up at Marcus. "Daddy, when can I meet my little brother?" The room instantly became silent. Marcus and I exchanged a look. Neither of us had discussed this. Not once. Yet somehow, our daughter had already figured out more than we realized. Marcus carefully set down his coffee cup. "Who told you about that?" he asked gently. Lily shrugged. "I heard Grandma talking about it." My stomach tightened. Marcus took a deep breath before answering. "Maybe one day." Lily smiled and returned to her coloring book as if she had asked the simplest question in the world. But for me, nothing felt simple anymore. Because for the first time, I wasn't just thinking about my own feelings. I was starting to realize that the decisions I made next would affect not only Marcus and me, but two innocent children whose lives were becoming connected whether I liked it or not. And the more I thought about it, the more impossible the situation felt. The weeks that followed were filled with uncertainty. Marcus and I continued living together, but our relationship felt different. We were polite, respectful, careful. It was as if both of us were afraid of saying the wrong thing and pushing the other further away. One Friday evening, after Lily had gone to a friend's birthday party, Marcus approached me with a serious expression. "There's something I need to tell you." My stomach immediately tightened. "What is it?" He sat down across from me and rubbed his hands together nervously. "My son was admitted to the hospital earlier this week." I froze. Apparently, the baby had developed a respiratory infection and had spent several days under observation. The doctors expected him to recover, but hearing the worry in Marcus's voice was impossible to ignore. For the first time, I wasn't hearing him talk about the affair or his ex. I was hearing a father talk about his child. A scared father. As much as I wanted to stay angry, I couldn't ignore that. "Is he okay now?" I asked quietly. Marcus nodded. "He's doing better." Relief flashed across his face. Then he added something unexpected. "I realized something while I was sitting in that hospital." I looked at him. "I spent so much time trying to fix what happened between us that I never accepted that I can't change the past." Neither of us spoke. "I hurt you," he continued. "And I keep hoping there's some perfect explanation that will make the pain disappear. But there isn't." Tears filled my eyes. Because for the first time, it didn't sound like he was trying to convince me to stay. He was simply telling the truth. The following weekend, Lily asked again about her little brother. This time she was more persistent. "Why can't I meet him?" I struggled to find an answer. Children see the world differently than adults. To Lily, this wasn't about betrayal or heartbreak. It wasn't about trust or complicated relationships. To her, it was simply a little boy who happened to be her brother. A few days later, I found myself sitting alone in my car outside a grocery store, thinking about everything that had happened over the past year. The affair. The pregnancy. The postponed wedding. The counseling. The endless uncertainty. I realized I had spent so much time asking whether I could forgive Marcus that I had never asked myself a different question. What kind of future did I actually want? Not what Marcus wanted. Not what our families wanted. Not what seemed easiest. What did I want? The answer wasn't clear. But one thing had become obvious. I couldn't remain stuck in limbo forever. Something had to change. That evening, I asked Marcus to sit down with me. His face immediately became tense. He clearly thought I was about to end things. Instead, I handed him a piece of paper. He looked confused. "What is this?" "A list." "A list of what?" "The things I would need if there is ever going to be a future for us." Marcus stared at the paper. Then he slowly began reading. Complete honesty. Individual counseling. Continued couples therapy. Clear boundaries with his ex. No secrets. No disappearing for hours without communication. Time. Lots of time. When he finished reading, he looked up at me. For the first time in months, there was a small flicker of hope in his eyes. But before he could say anything, I raised my hand. "Don't misunderstand." His expression changed. I am not promising that I will stay. The hope faded slightly. I'm saying these are the minimum conditions if I even consider it. Marcus nodded slowly. I understand. And surprisingly, he did. There were no arguments. No attempts to negotiate. No promises he couldn't keep. Just understanding. For the first time since the affair, the conversation felt honest. Neither of us pretending. Neither of us forcing an outcome. Just two people facing the reality of what had happened. But neither of us knew that another conversation was coming soon, one that would change everything we thought we knew about how the affair had actually begun. And that conversation would come from someone neither of us expected. A few weeks later, the unexpected conversation finally happened. Marcus's older brother came to visit. Over dinner, he quietly shared something that neither of us had known. Months before the affair happened, Marcus had confided in him about feeling disconnected, overwhelmed, and afraid to talk openly about his struggles. His brother made it clear that this wasn't an excuse for what Marcus had done. Cheating was a choice, and Marcus alone was responsible for it. But it helped me understand that the affair hadn't happened because of something I lacked or because our relationship was worthless. For the first time, I stopped carrying the burden of asking myself, why wasn't I enough? The truth was that I had always been enough. Marcus had simply made a terrible decision. Over the following months, I watched his actions more than his words. He continued therapy. He remained transparent. He showed up consistently for our daughter and for his son. Most importantly, he stopped pressuring me to make a decision. The wedding remained postponed. Life moved forward one day at a time. Eventually, I reached a place I never thought I would. The anger began to soften. The pain didn't disappear completely, but it no longer controlled every thought. One afternoon, I watched Lily playing in the park with her little brother for the very first time. They laughed together as if none of the complicated history between the adults existed. In that moment, I realized something important. The affair would always be part of our story. The child would always be part of our lives. Neither of those facts could be changed. The only thing I could control was whether I wanted to build a future based on the mistakes of the past or on the choices we made moving forward. Several months later, Marcus and I sat together on the same patio where we had once discussed postponing our wedding. The sun was setting. The air was calm. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then he looked at me and asked the question I had been expecting for months. Do you think we still have a future together? I smiled softly. Maybe. It wasn't the certainty he once wanted. But it was honest. And after everything we had been through, honesty was worth more than promises. Our journey wasn't perfect. It wasn't the love story either of us imagined. But it was real. And sometimes, real life asks us to choose between holding on to our pain and giving ourselves permission to heal. So if you were in my position, knowing everything that happened, would you choose to walk away and start over? Or would you take the risk of rebuilding the relationship? I was 31 years old when my younger sister stole my husband and got pregnant with his child. And somehow, I became the bad person in the story. If you saw my life back then, you would have thought I had everything figured out. My husband, Ethan, and I lived in a beautiful suburban neighborhood outside of Atlanta. We had a large white house with black shutters, matching SUVs in the driveway, and one of those marriages people constantly praised online. Couple goals. That's what everyone called us. Especially after Ethan started growing his construction business. We went from struggling newlyweds living in a tiny apartment to hosting backyard cookouts and holiday dinners for both families. I supported that man from the beginning. When his company nearly failed during the first year, I worked double shifts as a nurse to help pay our mortgage. I covered bills while he rebuilt. I skipped vacations. I sold jewelry my grandmother left me just so we wouldn't lose the house. And when he finally became successful? He forgot who stood beside him at rock bottom. My younger sister, Lily, was 24 at the time everything started falling apart. She had always been the pretty one in the family. Blonde hair, perfect smile, tiny waist, social media obsessed. Growing up, people compared us constantly. She's the beautiful sister. You're the smart one. As if that was supposed to make me feel better. Still, I loved her deeply. After our dad died, I practically helped raise her while our mother drowned herself in grief and prescription pills. I paid for Lily's first car. Helped her with rent during college. Let her cry on my couch after every breakup. I thought we were close. That's why I ignored the warning signs. The long conversations between her and Ethan during family dinners. The private jokes. The way she suddenly started showing up at our house even when I wasn't home. At first, I honestly thought Ethan was just being supportive. Lily had recently broken up with her boyfriend and was struggling emotionally. That's what they told me anyway. I believed them. One night, I came home early from work because I had a migraine so bad I could barely drive. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I remember noticing Ethan's truck parked outside and thinking maybe he was upstairs sleeping. Then I heard laughing. A woman's laugh. Coming from my kitchen. I walked in slowly, still holding my purse. And there they were. My sister sitting on the kitchen counter wearing Ethan's hoodie. Ethan standing between her legs. His hands on her waist. Kissing her like I had never existed. For a second, nobody moved. I think my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. Then Lily jumped down quickly and started crying immediately. Emma, wait. Wait for what? Wait for my soul to leave my body? I threw my purse so hard it hit the wall beside them. Ethan kept saying, it's not what it looks like, which honestly should be illegal for cheaters to say at this point because what else could it possibly look like? I screamed so loudly the neighbor's dog started barking. And Lily? My own sister had the nerve to say, we didn't mean for this to happen. Didn't mean for what to happen? Because affairs don't accidentally continue for months. That night, Ethan admitted everything. It had been going on for almost a year. A year. While I was working overtime. While I was planning our anniversary trip. While I was sitting beside Lily helping her cry over fake problems she created herself. The next morning, I drove straight to my mother's house expecting support. Instead, she looked exhausted before I even finished explaining. Then she rubbed her forehead and said, Emma, marriages go through difficult seasons. I just stared at her. Because surely she misunderstood. My husband is sleeping with your other daughter, I said slowly. And my mother sighed like I was stressing her out. Well. Lily says you and Ethan were growing apart. I honestly felt something inside me break in that moment. Not because of Ethan. Because of her. My own mother. Over the next few weeks, things somehow became even worse. Lily announced she was pregnant. And suddenly everybody acted like protecting her feelings mattered more than protecting mine. Family members started calling me bitter because I refused to attend gatherings where Ethan and Lily showed up together. One aunt actually told me, a baby is a blessing no matter how it got here. Easy thing to say when it's not your husband's baby growing inside your sister. The final straw came during Thanksgiving. My mother invited both of them to dinner without telling me. I showed up carrying homemade pies only to find Lily sitting comfortably beside Ethan wearing oversized maternity clothes while my family acted like this insanity was completely normal. My uncle even toasted to new beginnings. New beginnings. I stood there holding a pumpkin pie while my entire family celebrated my humiliation. Then Lily started crying at the table saying she never wanted the family divided. That's when I snapped. I laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind of laugh people make right before they completely lose respect for everyone in the room. I looked directly at my mother and asked, so this is who you all are now? Nobody answered. Not one person defended me. That night, I packed everything important into my car and left Atlanta before sunrise. No goodbye texts. No dramatic social media posts. Nothing. I drove to Chicago with less than $4,000 in my bank account, a suitcase full of clothes, and enough anger to fuel me for years. At first, life was brutal. I rented a tiny apartment above a noisy laundromat. The heating barely worked during winter, and the pipes made horrible sounds all night long. I picked up extra nursing shifts at a rehabilitation center and cried in my car during lunch breaks because my entire life felt destroyed. Meanwhile, social media tortured me daily. Pictures of Ethan and Lily smiling together. Gender reveal party photos. Comments from family members calling them beautiful. Even worse? People online thought I was the jealous ex-wife who couldn't move on. Because nobody tells the full truth when they're trying to protect their image. So I disappeared completely. I deleted almost everyone. Changed my number. Focused only on work. And slowly, something inside me changed. The sadness turned into ambition. Then obsession. Then success. By 35, I had opened my own private patient care consulting company. By 37, I owned a luxury condo overlooking Lake Michigan. And by 38? I became the woman Ethan once said would always need him. What nobody knew was that karma had already started visiting my old family long before they heard my name again. The first person to contact me after almost 7 years of silence was my cousin Rachel. Not because she missed me. Because she needed money. I was sitting in my office overlooking downtown Chicago when her name flashed across my phone screen. For a moment, I honestly thought I was hallucinating. Rachel had completely disappeared after the scandal. She used to comment heart emojis under Lily's photos while I was barely surviving emotionally. I almost ignored the call. But curiosity won. Hello? There was a long awkward pause before she spoke. Emma, wow. You sound good. I leaned back in my chair slowly. What do you want, Rachel? People never randomly reconnect after abandoning you unless they need something. And I was right. Within 5 minutes, she started explaining how her husband lost his job, their mortgage payments were behind, and they were going through a difficult season. Interesting. That phrase again. The same nonsense people told me while my life was collapsing. I listened quietly while she stumbled through excuses. Then she said something that made me laugh out loud. You know, family should be there for each other. Family. Now suddenly I was family again. Not when I was alone crying in a freezing apartment. Not when I spent holidays eating takeout by myself because seeing happy families physically hurt. But now that I was successful? Now I mattered. I told her calmly, I hope things work out for you, and hung up. She called back 6 times. I blocked her number. That should have been the end of it. But 2 days later, my mother emailed me. Not to apologize. Not to ask how I was doing. She sent photos. Pictures of Lily's children. Plural. Turns out Ethan and Lily had 3 kids together now. At the bottom of the email, my mother wrote. They ask about you sometimes. Life is too short for this bitterness. Bitterness. I stared at that word for a long time. People always call you bitter when you refuse to accept disrespect quietly. I closed the email without responding. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I missed them. Because I was angry all over again. Angry that nobody in my family had ever truly apologized. They just expected time to erase betrayal like it was some embarrassing misunderstanding. Around midnight, my fiancé found me sitting alone in the dark living room. Daniel was completely different from Ethan. Calm. Patient. Emotionally mature. He was a corporate attorney from Boston who somehow still treated waiters kindly and remembered tiny details about people's lives. We met during a hospital fundraising event 3 years earlier, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt genuinely safe with someone. He noticed immediately that something was wrong. You got quiet, he said softly while sitting beside me. I handed him my phone silently. He read the email carefully without interrupting. Then he looked at me. Do you want to respond? I shook my head. I don't even know what I feel anymore. And that was true. The pain wasn't sharp anymore like before. It was colder now. Like scar tissue. Daniel wrapped his arm around me gently. You don't owe people access to you just because they share your DNA. That sentence stayed in my mind for days. Because my entire family raised me to believe forgiveness meant returning to people no matter what they did. But what nobody talks about is this. Sometimes forgiveness without accountability becomes permission. A week later, things became even stranger. I was attending a healthcare leadership conference in New York when someone called my name inside the hotel lobby. I turned around. And nearly dropped my coffee. Ethan. Older now. Heavier. The confident energy he used to carry was completely gone. For a second, we just stared at each other. 7 years disappeared instantly. I noticed the wrinkles first. Then the exhaustion in his face. He looked shocked too, but not in a happy way. More like someone seeing the consequences of their decisions standing directly in front of him. Emma, he said quietly. I almost didn't recognize his voice. He walked closer slowly like approaching a wild animal that might attack. You look, he paused. You look amazing. I gave a polite smile. Years ago, hearing that would have healed something inside me. Now it meant nothing. What are you doing here? I asked. Construction expo across the street. There was another awkward silence. Then he glanced at the engagement ring on my hand. I watched his eyes change immediately. That tiny moment told me everything. He didn't expect me to move on this well. Men like Ethan always assume the woman they destroyed will remain emotionally frozen forever. So you're engaged, he said carefully. Yes. He nodded slowly, forcing a smile. That's good. But he didn't look happy. Not even close. And for the first time, I realized something important. Ethan expected his life to improve after betraying me. Instead, life had aged him. We ended up sitting in the hotel cafe for almost an hour. Not because I missed him. Because I wanted answers. Real answers. At some point, I asked quietly, "Why did you do it?" He stared down at his coffee for a long time before speaking. "I was stupid." "No," I said calmly. "Stupid is forgetting an anniversary. You destroyed my life." "Why?" His jaw tightened. Then finally he admitted something I never expected. When the business became successful, everything changed. People started treating me differently. I liked the attention. Lily made me feel admired all the time. Admired. That was it? Years of marriage traded for ego strokes from my younger sister. He continued talking quietly. You were always working. Always tired. And Lily, he stopped himself. And Lily what? She made life feel exciting. I almost laughed. Exciting. Affairs always feel exciting until real life starts demanding diapers, bills, screaming children, and trust that no longer exists. Then he said something that caught me completely off guard. I thought you'd fight harder for us. I blinked slowly. You cheated on me with my sister. I know. No, I don't think you do. He looked ashamed for the first time. Then came the real shock. We're having problems, he admitted quietly. Of course they were. Because relationships built on betrayal eventually start drowning in suspicion. If someone cheats with you, a part of you always wonders if they'll cheat on you too. I should have felt satisfied hearing that. Instead, I mostly felt tired. Before leaving, Ethan asked softly, "Do you think your family would ever want to see you again?" I looked directly at him. They never lost me, I said. They threw me away. And the expression on his face told me he finally understood exactly what they had done. After my conversation with Ethan, I returned to Chicago expecting life to go back to normal. But something had shifted inside me. For years, I imagined that seeing him again would either destroy me or magically heal me. Instead, it did neither. It just confirmed what I already knew. The people who broke me were ordinary. Flawed. Selfish. Weak. And the version of me they abandoned no longer existed. A month later, Daniel and I hosted a small engagement dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the lake. Nothing too flashy. Just close friends, co-workers, and a few people who had truly become family over the years. Real family. The kind that stays when life gets ugly. I wore a simple black dress, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely peaceful. No pretending. No performing strength. Just peace. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed repeatedly inside my purse. I ignored it at first. Then Daniel glanced at me and smiled. You should probably check that. I opened my phone. 23 missed calls. All from my mother. Immediately, my stomach tightened. Then came a text from Rachel. Call your mom. It's serious. I stepped away from the table and called back. My mother answered crying so hard she could barely breathe. Emma, she sobbed. It's Lily. Apparently, Ethan had left. Not temporarily. Completely. Over the years, his business started failing after some bad investments and legal issues with one of his partners. Financial stress destroyed their relationship slowly. According to my mother, they fought constantly. Lily accused him of cheating. Ethan accused her of controlling him. And eventually, he walked out. The irony was almost unbelievable. The same man she helped steal became the same man who abandoned her. Now Lily was alone with 3 children, debt, and a collapsing marriage that had started from betrayal in the first place. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. But another part remembered sleeping alone in a freezing apartment while my family celebrated her pregnancy. My mother kept crying on the phone. She needs you right now. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Not how are you? Not I'm sorry. Still about Lily. Always Lily. I closed my eyes for a second before answering quietly. She needed me when she slept with my husband too. Silence. Then my mother whispered, people make mistakes. I almost laughed again. Amazing how betrayal becomes mistakes when it happens to someone else. But despite everything, I agreed to visit Atlanta one last time. Not to save anyone. Not to reunite. Just to finally close that chapter of my life properly. When I arrived at my mother's house 2 days later, it looked smaller somehow. Older. The same family home that once felt warm now felt heavy with years of unresolved guilt. My mother cried the moment she saw me. She tried to hug me immediately, but I stepped back politely. Not aggressively. Just honestly. Her face fell instantly. That was probably the first time she truly realized time does not pause while people wait for forgiveness. Lily was upstairs. When I entered the room, I barely recognized her. The confident, glamorous girl who once stole my husband looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair messy. Stress written all over her face. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she started crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I stayed quiet. And suddenly years of excuses came pouring out of her. She admitted she had always envied me. Not my looks. Not my career. My stability. According to Lily, people admired me in ways she never experienced. She spent her whole life chasing attention because attention was the only thing that made her feel valuable. When Ethan started noticing me, she said through tears, "I liked feeling chosen for once." Chosen. That word made me sad more than angry. Because she destroyed my life trying to fill emptiness inside herself. Then she looked at me and asked the question everyone secretly wanted answered. "Can you forgive me?" The room became painfully quiet. My mother stood near the doorway listening nervously. Years ago, I thought forgiveness meant restoring relationships exactly as they were before. But life taught me differently. Forgiveness is not access. Forgiveness is not pretending betrayal never happened. And forgiveness does not erase consequences. I looked directly at Lily. Then I said calmly, "I don't hate you anymore." She started crying harder. "But we will never be sisters again." That sentence shattered her more than yelling ever could. Because deep down, she already knew it was true. I turned to my mother next. "You failed me," I said quietly. Tears rolled down her face immediately. "When I needed protection, you protected the people hurting me because it felt easier than confronting the truth." She tried apologizing repeatedly, but honestly, some wounds heal crooked. You survive them. You move forward. But they never fully disappear. Before leaving, I met Ethan one final time to sign the last divorce-related property paperwork that had somehow remained unresolved for years. Seeing him again felt strange. Not painful. Just distant. Like looking at someone from another lifetime. He looked at my engagement ring quietly before speaking. "Do you love him?" I smiled without hesitation. "Yes. Real love feels calm. Not chaotic. Not secretive. Not destructive." Ethan nodded slowly like a man finally understanding the cost of his choices. Then he surprised me. "You deserved better than all of us." For once, he was right. A few months later, Daniel and I got married in a small ceremony near the water in Chicago. No giant guest list. No fake smiles. Just peace. And as I stood there saying my vows, I realized something important. The worst thing that ever happened to me also saved me. Because losing the wrong people made space for the right life. And sometimes, the family that abandons you teaches you the most valuable lesson of all. Love should never require you to betray yourself just to keep other people comfortable.